Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
And today we're talking about The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. Released in 2008, directed by Rob Cohen, written by Alfred Gough and Miles Miller, and starring Brendan Fraser, Jet Li, Maria Bello, John Hannah, Luke Ford, Isabella Lung, Liam Cunningham, and Michelle Yeoh. Academy Award winners now, Brendan Fraser and Michelle Yeoh. You know what's actually kind of funny is I was looking on IMDb for trivia for this movie, and it didn't even occur to me while I was watching the movie, but Michelle Yeoh and Brendan Fraser won their Oscars last year. Both of them won the same year for they won their Oscars, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, for The Whale and
Everything Everywhere All at Once. Yeah, that's right. So, like I said, this movie came out in 2008. It's the third movie of the Mummy franchise, the final movie of the trilogy. Not directed by Stephen Sommers, not written by Stephen Sommers either, unlike the first two. And this movie, I didn't see it. This is actually the first time I watched it. I didn't see it in the theater. I don't really know why. Because I feel like I liked the other two. I was too busy. I don't know when this movie came out. I don't remember like what month, but I was going to say I was too busy seeing The Dark Knight like 8 times in the theater. So I didn't go see this one. And I bought it on DVD at like a Black Friday thing, but just never watched it. And then eventually I bought this trilogy, so I kind of upgraded it. And then today I finally decided to watch it for the podcast. So my initial thoughts are this, going to be the podcast basically. But you, Stu, I know you'd seen it before. Did you get to see it in the theater?
I did.
Did you?
I saw it when it came out. Funny, I had just missed like meeting Rob Cohen because I guess I think maybe he was doing like a quality check on the movie or something.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know what reason why he was in Cleveland of all places.
Right.
But like the day before, like I was off that day, so he came in. I guess he came in on my off day and like watched most of the movie and left. But I don't know why he was in Cleveland at that little theater for whatever reason.
I wonder if is he like from Cleveland or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm curious. It doesn't. No, he was born in New York. He attended Harvard, according to IMDb. Interesting. Weird. I'd be curious as to why he was in Cleveland as well.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, what did you think of the movie when you saw it?
I liked it. It's not nearly as good as the first two. I mean, the second one is good. The first one is great. The second one is good. This one is passable. I do like it. It's the bottom of the three.
Sure.
There are a lot of things that I like. There are a few things that I like. There are a few things that I like. There are a few things that I don't like. But overall, it's not a great movie, but I've seen far worse movies.
Yeah, that's how I felt about it watching it today. You and I both really liked the first one. I forget what I gave, my rating for the second one, but we liked it.
I forget to, yeah.
And this one, this one has a 13%, I believe, on Rotten Tomatoes. And so I was expecting it to just be awful. And like you said, there's things that I don't like about it, but overall it's decent. It's passable. Yeah, it's decent. It's like I said this about the last movie we did. It's not a bad way to pass 2 hours, basically, like I wasn't upset that I had to watch it or anything. So,
yeah.
But I do think we should talk about some of the stuff we don't like about the movie, but,
yeah.
Funny enough, Roger Ebert. I was looking at I just was curious and was looking at critic reviews from Rotten Tomatoes, and a lot of them actually I would click on it and it would take me to a dead web page that wasn't there, but Roger Ebert's was still up. And he didn't give it like I don't know what Roger Ebert's rating scale is. I want to say he probably gave, like, if a perfect score would be 4 stars, I think. And so he gave this movie 3 stars and said it was the best of the 3. He liked this movie the best out of all 3 Mummy movies. And he basically said, like, it's ridiculous and kind of a stupid movie, but he, like, really just had fun watching it and enjoyed it. And I guess he felt like he felt like the movie knew that it was kind of ridiculous and silly and embraced it. And he just appreciated it for that fact. Most of the other reviews I saw from, like, the big name reviewers that I know, like Owen Gleiberman and Richard Roper and Peter Travers and stuff like that, they all hated on it. But Roger Ebert, surprisingly enough, really enjoyed it.
Did Roger Ebert, like, did he drink at all?
I don't, not that I recall. I mean, he might have, I don't know if he, like, abstained from drinking, but I don't think he wasn't, like, known for drinking or anything like that. You know what I mean?
I think he may have had a few sips. Because
what's funny is, like, I used to love listening to, or they used to have their own little, like, show. Siskel and Ebert had, like, a TV show.
I remember. Yeah.
And then after Gene Siskel died, Richard Roper took over. And I used to love watching Ebert and Roper, but I tended to agree with Roper more often than Ebert.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of the last reviews I read of Ebert's, and because I used to go to his website all the time and just see what he thought about the current movies.
Yeah. And
then I finally stopped because I was disagreeing with him so much. And one of the last movies that I read his review for that I was like, yeah, he and I just don't agree, was for the Nicolas Cage movie Knowing. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
That movie is actually really pretty good up until the end, and the end just ruins it, if I recall. And he loved that movie. And I was like, Ebert, I think, and I feel like, and I think there was another review that I read where he didn't like the movie, and he was, like, asking questions. Yeah, and I thought it was a great movie, and he was asking questions like, they didn't explain this, blah blah blah, and I was like, did you fall asleep in this movie? Like, I honestly thought I was like, Ebert, I don't know if you know what you're talking about anymore. So I kind of stopped paying attention to him. I mean, I definitely respect Roger Ebert. He was, one of the most well-known movie critics ever, but yeah, I think I started really disagreeing with his taste by, towards the end of his career. And I don't always agree with Richard Roper either. I don't really see his reviews anymore. He used to have an app where he would post his reviews and have little, like, video clips and stuff, but that has gone away.
I've never really listened to critics. Like, I mean, like, I never really, like, sought them out and read critic reviews.
Yeah, and I probably around that time that I stopped reading Ebert is when I kind of just stopped. Because I don't really read reviews anymore either. I actually don't read reviews at all. There's one movie website that I go to on a regular basis, and I will look to see what score they gave it, but I don't usually look at reviews. I've kind of gotten to we've talked about this with Rotten Tomatoes, how Rotten Tomatoes has kind of ruined it. I try to avoid knowing too much about a movie before going in. Like, unfortunately, I already saw the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire Rotten Tomatoes score, and I wish I hadn't. I wanted to just go into that movie blind.
I haven't seen the Rotten Tomato score, but I've seen other people's scores, and it doesn't make me feel good.
No, it doesn't make me. Yeah, the Rotten Tomato score didn't make me feel very good. So I still want to see the movie, but my expectations have kind of been lowered, and I wish that hadn't been the case. I wish I had just gone in and seen the movie for myself and decided but I don't know, maybe with my expectations lowered, maybe I'll enjoy it more. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. I don't know what Roger Ebert was on that day, but I would like to have some of it.
Because this is definitely not the best of the trilogy.
No. It's not a bad movie. I want to say that now. It's not a bad movie, but I guess we can just get right into it. its biggest flaw, there are three big things that are very wrong with this movie. And I feel like you and I are going to agree that these are the three biggest things wrong with the movie.
Probably.
The biggest thing is the story. It's just inherently stupid.
Right.
Now, the first two are not the most intelligent stories, but they are competent enough to suffice. And what the stories lack in, I guess, intelligence. Not saying that the writers aren't intelligent. Stephen Sommers isn't intelligent. He is, but what it lacks in that area, the movie makes up for. Well, at least the first one makes up for in literally everything else.
Right. Yeah.
The second one, not so much to the degree of the first one, but still, it's the same basic principle. This one, not so much. First of all, it's called The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. There are no mummies in the movie. They're in China. There are no mummies in China.
Right.
You could have gotten away with just calling it Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. Or you could have called it The O'Connells, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. That's just
brand
stupid.
recognition. That's the main reason it's called The Mummy.
Yeah. Brand. I get it. I get it. But when I remember when this movie came out and I saw the trailer, literally everybody said, there are no mummies in China. They're like
right. They didn't do that.
They didn't
and
do
yet,
that.
And the movie tries to kind of convince us that these undead type people are mummies because like there's the scene where like I actually like this moment with John Hannah's character where he shows up in the plane shooting at all the, undead, whatever. And he's like, die, mummies, die. But they're not mummies. They're just,
they refer to the undead as mummies throughout this entire movie. And I guess because they're petrified, like they turn into something. I think it's clay or they call them a name for it.
On IMDb, they call them the Terracotta Army.
Yeah, terracotta. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the story is just it's stupid, but I'm okay with that, I guess.
Sure.
Second is Evie. Maria Bello's that's not it, man. I'm sorry. Maria Bello is a fine actress.
Yeah.
I don't buy her Evie. No. It was just a paycheck. And that is like that's something that is it when Rachel Weisz said no, the movie should have been canceled.
Right.
They are the heart of this franchise. The chemistry between Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser is so thick. I loved seeing them on screen together, especially in that first movie.
Yeah.
And to not have them on screen in this movie is criminal.
I agree. And I think the movie, you could have still made the movie and had the tension between Alex and Rick if they had killed off Evie. Had it, they could have had it to where Evie had died from whatever, maybe it was not necessarily like on an adventure, maybe something, who knows. And Alex like blamed Rick for it or something, and that was why they were kind of driven apart or something. But, and I don't know if that's necessarily would have been the way to go, but I will say Maria Bello, again, like you said, she's a good actress. She's good in stuff I've seen her in. She is not necessarily bad in this movie. I also just don't think the writers understood Evie.
Absolutely not. Like she feels. I don't mean. I don't want to be. I'm not trying to be funny when I say this, but she feels like a completely different person.
Yeah, she does. Well, I didn't take very many notes for this, but one of the notes I wrote was there's a scene where she's fighting and she is so good at fighting. And Evie was not incompetent, but she was like, her character, especially like in the first movie, was this super smart, but like clumsy kind of person. And that's not how Maria Bello is. Like Maria Bello she's just like good at everything. Or that's how it came across to me. And Evie doesn't really bring much to the movie. Yeah, her character, and there's, I understand why they did it. It's reminiscent of when George Lazenby took over for Sean Connery in the James Bond franchise. But like Evie's introduction, where she's like, I feel like a completely different person, or I can say, she's talking about the character in her book. Yeah. She's like, we're completely different people. I was like, it was a kind of a grown eye roll joke because, hey, look, we replaced the actress. It's just But
they do that. They do that in other movies. One that comes to mind, Iron Man 2, when Don Cheadle walks in, he's like, I didn't expect to see you here. Like, hey, I'm here. Let's do this. Right. So that was actually kind of funny. But yeah, I agree that that's a grown moment for sure. Going back to what you said about her being a competent fighter, I would have bought that if it were more like how Jackie Chan fights in his movies. So it's like Jackie Chan has a very comedic fighting style. Right. It feels very accidental, but it's very like it's really good. Right. I would have bought that over her just knowing how to fight. You know what I'm saying? Because I can buy Rick teaching her some things over the years, but Evie is still an inherently clumsy person. Right. And that's always going to be who Evie is. And you know what I'm saying? So yes, I could buy that. Even if you go back to The Mummy Returns, when she kind of recalled the skills of her former life and was able to fight Anck-su-namun. Yeah. I could even buy that she retained that skill. But what doesn't sit right with me is, again, she feels so different. Mm-hmm. And it's not just because of the fighting. Like I don't buy that Evie would be writing romance novel. She's too smart for that. Right. And not saying that, romance novels don't take a certain amount of intelligence and competency. I'm not saying that. It's that is just so out of character for Evie. Yeah,
Evie wasn't the type of person to read romance novels. So
yes, right. Yes, she would become a professor or I don't know, anything but that. Right. And I'm not saying she could still be a writer, but she wouldn't be writing romance novels. I'm sorry. Like she would write like a textbook or something.
Right. Yeah, no. You're absolutely right. And I was going to say, I did appreciate, though, that the two books were the first two movies, basically, The Mummy and The Mummy Returns. Yeah. I thought that was a nice little nod. But no, I agree with you. And I like the writers of this movie. Alfred Gough and Miles Miller, they created Smallville. Yes. And they co-wrote Spider-Man 2. Well, they co-wrote the story for Spider-Man 2. Alvin Sargent wrote the screenplay. And they, I haven't actually watched it yet, but I've heard really good things. They created or developed, I guess you could say, the TV show Wednesday. So they're good writers. But so I'm curious.
Wednesday is really good, by the way.
That's what I've heard. So and I just saw the Beetlejuice teaser just came out, and I didn't realize, but they wrote that movie.
I'm waiting until the theater, until I go go see a movie to watch it. I'm trying to keep from watching it.
Well, they wrote the screenplay for it, so hopefully it's good. But so yeah, I'm curious if there were. I think those types of things maybe they came up with. Maybe they made those missteps with Evie's character. But overall, I'm curious if there were other hands in the script that weren't credited. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or if there was studio interference or something. So the story's kind of stupid, and Evie feels like a completely different person. No pun intended. What was the third item on your list there?
I mean, this one is pretty obvious as well. Rick, not Rick, I guess Rick, Evie, and Alex, I don't buy it that he is their son at all. Not in the slightest.
Right.
In real life, Brendan Fraser and what's the guy's name?
Luke Ford.
Play Alex. Luke Ford. They're 13 years apart. And they clearly look 13 years apart. Like there's no mistaking that these two men are 13 years apart.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie is supposed to be like 20 years after the first movie, and that it doesn't really feel like it. Yeah, it doesn't really feel like it either. Luke Ford was kind of bugging me throughout the whole movie, and I couldn't figure out why.
Oh, I know exactly why. His accent is terrible. That's what it is. He's trying to do an American accent, and it's not good. That's why you're annoyed.
And so I was going to say, I looked him up because I was like, have I ever seen this guy in anything before? And I realized he was in the Australian film Animal Kingdom, and I was like, oh, this guy's Australian. I was like, no wonder. Because that's exactly what it was. I was like, something is just off, and then I realized he's struggling with his American accent.
Yep,
that's what it is. And so his line deliveries just kind of come off weird, and and it didn't feel any real chemistry between him and Lynn. That felt kind of forced to me. I will add a fourth point to yours, which is the other issue with this movie, and it's you can kind of overlook it, I guess. It's hard to overlook, but for a movie that is so visual effects heavy, the visual effects are not very good.
They're not.
There's like the Emperor. I also read that they only had Jet Li for a couple of days, which is why he's basically the terracotta general for most of the movie.
Yeah.
And then the Yetis don't look very good. It's just it's a lot of the visual effects just don't. I don't think they were even probably very good for 2008. They just don't hold up. So that's tough. That's tough as well because a lot of the movie depends on it.
Yeah, I actually like the Yetis.
Okay,
they're one of my favorite parts of the movie. I like the design of them. I love when they come rushing down the mountain. I love that part of the movie. There's a really great shot of Jonathan running away from the avalanche that I love. That's one of the best shots in the movie. But everything else, I agree. When Jet Li turns into the 3-headed dragon, that looks horrible.
Yeah, that was bad. Yep.
When he turns into, I don't know what that thing is, but I'm gonna call it a behemoth.
Yeah.
That looks terrible. That looks that might look worse than the dragon.
Right.
Now that I'm thinking of it, that might look worse than the dragon. When they turned into terracotta or clay, it looked smooth. It looked like it needed another render.
Yep. And then I was gonna say then the undead army, the one that starts to go towards Rick, and Rick is like, no, we're with Lynn, and the undead main guy or whatever is like, oh, okay. Yeah. Those guys don't look great either. Yeah,
they don't look great, but they look better than the terracotta
army. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was thinking back to something I had read. I think it was the Mummy, the first Mummy, where they had kind of, it might have been Mummy Returns. The animators, now that I think of it, might have been like G.I. Joe or something. It was a Stephen Sommers movie, but
okay, yeah.
The animators had become accustomed to working with Stephen Sommers, and Stephen Sommers was very particular about his CGI, which is why the Mummy looks so good in the first movie and even the second movie. There are a few scenes that don't look great in the second movie, but for the most part, I think it looks good. The Rock looked terrible though.
Yeah, I was gonna say The Rock looks bad, but
The Rock looks bad. But Stephen Sommers has been known to push the animators to the point where their computers shut down in order to get the image right, which is a little overboard.
Yeah,
but I wish there was a little bit of that in this movie because most of the CGI does not look great. And it's a shame because the action sequences, like the way they're written and the way they're directed, they're good action sequences. I like the chase scene through the city with the fireworks. I like that scene. Yeah. I like the avalanche scene. It just, the CGI just takes you out of it. And it's an eyesore. It's hard to ignore it. It's hard to look past it and enjoy what you're watching.
Right. And for the record, I don't mind the Yetis. I just didn't think they looked great. There's only one moment with the Yetis that kind of bothered me. And it's just it's a super nitpick. So it's not like it's a big deal. But there's John Hannah's character lights the fuse to like the dynamite. He's got all that dynamite hooked up to whatever. Mm-hmm. And he turns around and there's a Yeti right there. And he's like, and the Yeti like strokes his chin. The Yeti like contemplates like what to do or something. And I was kind of like, who thought that was a good idea? But other than that, I actually do think it's kind of cool that there's these abominable snowmen, you know, that like are kind of this myth that Lynn has like on her side and calls on them to come help, which I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, I do too. I love the inclusion of them in this movie. I would have preferred there been some kind of allusion to their presence before they showed up, because they literally come out of nowhere. Yeah. But I do like their inclusion in the movie. But yeah, those four things are by far the worst things about the movie. Despite those things, I still don't hate this movie.
Right. No, I mean,
I really like the fact that they switched it up and took it to China. I just wish they would have not called it The Mummy.
Right. And I can understand why people might have a hard time getting over those four things, especially like Alex. I'm just looking at the movie here, and Alex is supposed to be 21 years old, but he looks like he's about 30. You know, it's just, he doesn't like, he looks like he's a contemporary of Brendan Fraser, not his son. Right. So it's, Now, I will say the biggest saving grace of the movie, at least in my opinion, is Brendan Fraser. He's still just so much fun to watch. Yes. He can make, he's really good at making, like, I won't say bad dialogue, but like maybe somewhat cheesy dialogue. Still really kind of work. Like he's, he's really good at just, he doesn't phone it in by any means. He does a great job in this movie. Yeah. And he's still fun to watch. Yeah. And I like John Hannah, of course, as well, too. But, But Brendan Fraser really is like, he's the star of the movie, of course, but he's just entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, he's the big name of the movie, but they're trying to make it Alex's movie, and it's just not working.
Yes, and it does not work. But then also, like, Alex kind of disappears for a little bit, like in the third act. Like it's very much Rick and I guess Evie kind of in the third act. And at one point, I remember even thinking, like, "Where's Alex?
Where's Alex?"
So, but you're right. It almost kind of felt like Mutt in Indiana Jones 4. Like it almost kind of felt like they were trying to hand off the franchise to somebody else, but it was not working.
No.
So,
how do you feel about the Dragon Emperor? How do you feel about Jet Li?
I like Jet Li. I like the idea of the terracotta army. I actually think, you're talking about the firework chase. I love the horses that look like they're like the kind of old statuesque kind of like those. I thought those horses, just the design of that and the idea behind that was super cool.
I agree. You know what they kind of reminded me of? They kind of, you know how like statues get when they're like by water, like they kind of turn bluish. It kind of,
it's exactly kind of what it looks like. Yep. Which I thought was really cool. It was well done. But as far as him as a character, kind of bland, kind of a bland villain.
Plain.
Yeah.
He wants to take over the world.
Right.
That's so original.
Right. Yeah.
Like, at least, you know what I'm saying? Like, at least Imhotep in the first movie, it was for love.
Right.
It's like, if I can't get the love of my life, everybody's gonna suffer. I could rock with that. I could rock with that. In the second one, he's not quite as motivated. He's kind of evil for the sake of being evil. But I can live with it because a lot of the rest of the movie is really good. But with this movie, you got the four things that we mentioned before. The terrible CGI, the oldest, youngest Alex O'Connell.
Mm-hmm. The oldest, youngest, yeah.
Yeah. You got the multiverse Evie O'Connell, and then you got the horrible story. I won't say horrible. It's just stupid.
Right.
It just doesn't work. In case you haven't figured it out by now, my score has dropped by like half a star. We're 35 minutes into this, and I can feel my score going down.
Right, yeah.
However, I still like the movie. I will watch it in the future, just not nearly as often as the first one.
Indeed. I was thinking that too when I was watching it. I was like, I wasn't hating it watching it, but at the same time I thought, will I watch this again anytime soon? And I was like, probably not. No. I would, however, rewatch the first one like right now.
Yes.
But
oh my God, I love that movie so much.
So yeah, it is part of the Mummy trilogy, but it's because of those things that we talked about, it really just doesn't feel like a Mummy movie. It doesn't feel like a continuation of Rick O'Connell's story, even though it is Rick O'Connell and it's Alex and Evie, but it just doesn't feel like it really quite connects to the other two.
You know what it felt like? It felt like, I know you haven't seen it. I think it might be on Tubi. The animated series. They made an animated series out of this franchise. And it felt like an episode from the animated series.
Interesting.
And the animated series, to me, wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
It wasn't great, but it was decent.
Yeah.
As far as, cartoons from movies go.
Sure.
But this definitely felt very episodic. It did not feel like a continuation. It didn't feel like a culmination. Whatever third movies are supposed to be, it didn't feel like that.
Right.
How did you feel about Michelle Yeoh?
Kind of wasted.
I agree.
She was fine when she was on screen, but like it almost kind of felt like this movie really was kind of beneath her. Not like she was acting that way, but just it was the movie. She's better than the movie,
Yeah.
And she didn't really get to do a whole lot. So it's cool that she was in the movie, but I feel like
what that kind of sounds like, and this movie is not anywhere near as bad as the movie that I'm about to mention. It kind of sounds like Anthony Hopkins in The Last Night.
Right. Yes. Yeah. No, you're right. I would watch this movie, gladly watch this movie over The Last Night.
Oh yeah. Every day of the week, twice on Sunday, for sure.
Anthony Hopkins in The Last Night definitely felt like he needed a paycheck and just took that movie. It's kind of like part of me wonders why he was in Mission Impossible 2 as well. But anyway,
I forgot about that. Mission Impossible 2, I try to forget about that movie.
Right. Yeah, well, that's
I don't like that movie at all.
I do think we should do the Mission Impossible franchise. That movie is probably kind of, it's worse than this movie, but I was going to say, yes. I probably feel about Mission Impossible 2 kind of like how you feel about this one. Like, I know it's really bad and there's a lot of bad things about it, but I still kind of like it. And I think maybe it's just a nostalgia thing. I don't know, but yeah, I know. It's easily the worst of the franchise. Easily. But again, I don't know why Anthony Hopkins was in it. But this didn't feel that way. This didn't feel like Michelle Yeoh. Like, I wasn't like, why are you in this movie? But at the same time, I felt like the role was not as good as it should have been for somebody like Michelle Yeoh.
You know what I think? I think they were like, it would be great if we could get Michelle Yeoh for this. And like, they probably just called her up expecting her to say no. And then she just said yes. They had nothing to do. It was like, yeah, I'll do it. Like,
right.
All right, cool.
Okay. Could be. Same. I wonder if, I mean, like I said, Jet Li, they only had for I don't know how many days it was, but they didn't have him for the whole shoot of the movie, obviously. So I wonder if it was kind of the same thing. They were like, let's just shoot big. Let's try to get Jet Li. And they did, they got him. So,
yeah. This movie really tries, it really tries to bring people in with the names. Brendan Fraser,
yeah, for sure.
He's the star of the franchise, and you got Jet Li, one of the biggest action stars ever, and then you got Michelle Yeoh, one of the greatest actors in our generation. So it's definitely a like a Hollywood type movie.
Yeah. And you know what? I was just thinking about it too. Jet Li and Michelle Yeoh were like known for being good martial artists. And their fight was really like, I don't feel like they really showed off any of those skills in this movie.
Yeah,
really.
Not at all.
So it's weird.
Their fight didn't last long.
No.
Yeah.
I enjoyed seeing Liam Cunningham in this movie. If I had seen this movie back in 2008, I wouldn't have known who he was, but because I've watched this now after I had seen Game of Thrones, he played a character on Game of Thrones. He was actually one of my favorite characters on Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
And he's much different in this movie than he is on Game of Thrones. He's kind of more stoic, I would say, on Game of Thrones. Like there's scenes where he yells at people and stuff, but in this movie, he's kind of a crazy man, and it was interesting kind of seeing him play a different character.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious. I want you to go first. I'm curious what was your score at the beginning of the recording, and now what is your score now? Your rating.
At the beginning, it was a 3. As of right now, it's a 2.5. 2.5 dragons. Three-headed dragons. Yeah.
That's when I got done watching the movie, I was feeling 2.5, and I'm going to stick with that. So I'm going to do 2.5 as well. Fabergé eggs or whatever it was they were delivering to China in the beginning. And that's kind of how I felt. It was like, didn't hate it, but also just felt like it was, kind of middle of the road. I mean, that's what I said about the Teen Titans movie in the last episode, but just felt like it was kind of
just
it's all right. It's all right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps it up for that franchise. Unless we move on to the Tom Cruise Mummy.
Please, God, no. I haven't seen that. And I don't want to watch it. I'm gonna just say that now. I don't want to watch it.
I will say this: I saw it in the theater and didn't hate it, and then either saw it again or watched it once it came out with my father-in-law, I believe, and it was a lot harder to get through the second time around. I was not enjoying it the second time around as much. So yeah, we don't necessarily have to do that movie. I just I don't know if you would consider it part of the Mummy franchise. You know what? No. You know what movie we should do though? We should do Stephen Sommers' Van Helsing.
Absolutely. I could not agree more.
So I think that would be a fun one to do. Yeah.
Oh yes, we need to do that. Oh my God. Talk about a fun movie. Listen, that movie is not like from an objective point of view, it's not great.
Right.
However, you will have a great time watching that
movie. Right. Yes. And speaking of Stephen Sommers, I think that's another issue with this movie, not to go back, even though we've already done our rating. It lacks from Stephen Sommers not being a part of it. He may have produced it, but he wrote and directed the first two, and this movie lacks the Stephen Sommers touch.
Stephen Sommers understands adventure.
Right.
His movies may not be the best movies, but he's going to make sure you have fun.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a Stephen Sommers movie that I have seen that I haven't had fun. Even G.I. Joe, which is not a good movie.
No, yeah.
It's a good time. I remember watching that in the theater and like, yo, this this sucks, but it's like a good it's a good sucks. Like this, I could get with this.
That's funny. That's funny. That one is out of the Stephen Sommers movies I could think of. That one is probably my least favorite. But I've only seen it the one time.
I agree. It's at the bottom for me too. But I'll watch that over this.
Yeah.
And this is I kind of want to say this is a more straightforward movie because there's a lot of characters in
G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
But I guess they're about the same.
Right.
But G.I. Joe is a way more fun movie than this movie.
That's another franchise. I don't think that's on our list of movies to talk about, but I guess maybe we should add the G.I. Joe movies.
Yeah. I mean, it's only 2 of them, so.
Yeah, that's true. It's not. Well, unless you count Snake Eyes, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I haven't seen that.
No, I haven't either. All right, well, we'd love to know what you think about The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com. You can also comment on our Instagram at Cinema Heroes. If you're watching this on YouTube, give a thumbs up. Comment down below how you feel about the movie. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'd love to hear from you, however you want to reach out to us. I think that about wraps it up for this episode, though. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.